what's happening. But that's what I remember from that day for the most part. But I also remember going to lunch with people who worked there and taking me to Brody, because apparently that's where you go at MSU, is you go to Brody. So I had my first experience at Brody, and just kind of got to try to know everybody. So, but I think a lot, like even though that first month or two was probably a big blur of just trying to learn everything and learn the people here and trying to settle into a new role. So.
And you feel more settled now?
Yeah. Good. I'm a lot more settled, I'd say now.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I'd say there's a few different typical days. So they each take on different hats that I have here. So today is a fairly typical day in some regards, in that I do give shows here. I do some of the educational programming that we do, be it on the weekdays or even on the weekends. So it's interacting with our students that are coming through, or interacting with our K through 12 groups and visitors. And so I'm getting to actually just use the system for shows. So it's doing that programming piece, which I feel sometimes gets buried under a lot of the other stuff sometimes, so it's important for me to make sure I keep that going, and that is a fairly typical day still, because that's what is still really exciting and helps me think about, like, where do we want to go and how do we want to always try to improve ourselves. But then I also have meetings, and so it might be something like this, where I'm being interviewed about the planetarium, but it might be just talking about new ways we can collaborate and new ways we can bring a class in and things like that. I'm also teaching later today. I'm back in there with our ISP students doing a review for their quiz, so it's this more formal side of what we do in education. I'm also doing things like hiring someone, so the HR paperwork and the administrative side that comes with my job. And I'm answering a ton of emails and trying to set up things for a conference that we have in October. So it's just, this is a fairly typical day. It gives a good smattering of, there's these administrative things, there's these things where I'm doing this because it's a good collaborative effort in one way or another to kind of help make sure that the planetarium stays sort of in everyone's consciousness as a cool place to come and do things. And that we are an important resource on campus, and trying to make sure we can communicate that. And it's the programming and it's the administrative stuff, and it's just, that's probably a typical day. It's a good mix of that. Some days it's more one thing than the other. Some days it's I'm in meetings literally back to back from 8:30 to 5. But these are the better days when I can actually get in there. The only thing that's not in there today that I do sometimes is the programming on the D5, like just sitting in the dome by myself in the dark, actually programming stuff. But John's better at it, so he tends to do it more. But when I get to have a day where I just do that, I really like that too.
How often do K through 12 groups come through?
We have time slots 3 times a day, Tuesday through Friday. And so it can be anywhere from one group, which is today, or some days there's no groups, but that's fairly rare during the school year, up to the full 3 days, or 3 time slots, so that was yesterday. And so we probably average around 6 shows a week or so. I don't know, I haven't actually crunched the numbers, but sort of in a general feeling estimate, that's where we are.
And you also hold MSU classes here?
Mm-hmm. We also have an ISP class that meets here Monday through Friday. So it's a different section each day, each with 100 students. So we have that. Then once a year, one semester a year, I teach Astronomy 101 in the planetarium. And then on top of that, we have other classes that come in for I think one class has come up to 4 times in the semester to come use the planetarium in one way or another. So, and that's where we really can broaden how we reach people, because the class we have coming in Monday morning, for instance, is in our history class. And that's sort of, again, that future of the planetarium. How do we use the planetarium to teach Doesn't only have to be astronomy. It's always going to be our focus, but it can be art history, and that can be a really unique way to talk about buildings. Because when you can immerse someone in a building that's not just a two-dimensional image of the ceiling of this church in Greece, because they're going to see this church in Greece, you can actually immerse people in that space, and it feels very different. So we have them coming through, we have education classes coming through, science communication, geology classes come through, and in addition to astronomy and astrophysics classes that come through one or two times. So yes, we do host a lot of MSU classes too.
And then how often do you host public events?
Public shows we do every weekend pretty much, except for certain holidays, and then we close for about 6 to 8 weeks at the end of each summer to do maintenance. So our public shows are every Fridays and Saturday nights, and then Sunday afternoons. And that includes 3 showings of our feature show each weekend and 1 showing of our family show. And that's sort of like our standard public programming. In addition to that, we have our monthly Spartan Young Astronomers Club. So that's for kids 8 to 12, but that's also sort of general public and open to anyone who wants to come in. We also do a lot of programming in April for the Science Festival, so that's a lot of different kinds of lectures and talks and activities. We also help out with the MSU Observatory. That's 2 nights a month. And then we have a smattering of other public programming from that tends to be more one-off and tends to be more collaborations with other departments or units on campus. So like last night we held the WKAR pop-up story, so that was a big public event. We had over 100 people come in for that, and that was really exciting, and that's very much more of a one-time thing, but we might do it again sort of thing. But with nothing in the works right now. We're hosting a film series for the Broad in April. We do our own programming, sometimes like our Star Safari, but that's also still a collaboration with the Potter Park Zoo. So that's sort of a once-a-year kind of thing. So there's a smattering of these kinds of events that we probably have a couple of those every month on average, I'd say.
You mentioned the observatory. What's the connection between the observatory and the planetarium?
So we're connected in the sense that we're both in the physics and astronomy department, technically. This observatory is used mostly, I think, as a teaching tool for undergraduates who are doing research with it. But they also do informal outreach types of activities. So we go down there and we sort of help out with the telescopes and the observing each month when they do open. But that, I think, relationship has been strengthening as well in the past few years. Because there's been a few new things that we do, like the Science Festival. We started with that, the statewide astronomy night. So now we go down there with all of our outreach activities that we have, and we set those up at the observatory and do that along with the observing. And then we also do International Observe the Moon Night each year. So we have these 2 big events where we actually say, we're there, rain or shine today, and there's extra stuff to do. There's usually Oreos and or pudding involved, because you have to have something sweet, I guess. I don't know, it just works. So we do things like that. So in that sense, we are there to help them out. We don't really run it or anything, but we work together.
How do you decide what goes in the exhibit hall?
So some of it is just there's been things that have been there, and like the big Earth that's out there, that is a historical landmark at this point. That is as old as the building. It's been here since we opened. And if I think we took that away, it would be a travesty. And again, it's that history and future thing. But some of it is what's coming up in astronomy. What are some big things that we might want to talk about? So right now we're working on building an exhibit with a volunteer, Craig Whitford, who's awesome. He's building one for us on the solar eclipse that's happening in August. So we wanted to get the word out and make sure that we have plenty of different avenues that people are aware that this is happening and that they need to get out of town and go see it. And how to protect their eyes. That's very important too. So some of it's that. Some of it is we have these theme years on MSU's campus from the Cultural Engagement Council, and I serve on that council, and so to try to make sure that we're participating in that, an exhibit might be built for that. So the one prior to the eclipse was Falling Star, about meteorites that were observed, that were found in China most of which were observed falls, which is most people don't see them actually fall when they find them. So we highlighted those as part of the year, the China experience here. So there's that. Some of it is with like the touch screens that we have out there. There's a lot of considerations that go into that, but one, it's introducing new content that people can engage with in different ways, in a way that still allows some sort of choice in their level without also creating a huge footprint. Because that exhibit space is also our lobby space, our event space, our waiting space, and so on. We really can't take away too much floor space at the moment. So what are ways that we can engage people in astronomy in different ways without taking up too much room? So that's why we got touchscreens, and the reason why I saw 3 of them in particular was that we could sort of hit upon 3 major areas in astronomy. Sort of general astronomy, things that people might just find kind of cool and interesting, something that's more along the lines of MSU research. So we're highlighting sort of what's the newest and greatest thing in astronomy, particularly when it ties to MSU's research. And then something that's more on the cultural and historical side. So right now that's our moon landing one, so that's a very big historical thing in astronomy. But things that I'd like to do in the future is like, the Big Dipper is a shape that almost every culture in the Northern Hemisphere has something for, some sort of name and meaning attached to it. So what are all of those different things? And what are the different stories that go with it? And how does that fit within the overarching culture of these different peoples? So there's all of these different ways that we can talk about these sorts of things. So the touchscreens is something that we can fairly easily switch the content out at least once a year or so. So we can keep it fresh. So there's that aspect of it, and that's sort of the decisions. The one that we have right now on the moon also goes along with our show that we had. So some of it's like, what shows are we actually running? So can we build an exhibit that goes with that? And we also are hoping, knock on wood, need some wood to knock on. We're working on getting funding right now to put in a new permanent exhibit that will take up a bit more of a footprint, but still fairly small, that would also feature our meteorite collection. Because we have a really nice meteorite collection.